Okay, welcome to the video. Thanks for clicking. So today I want to talk about project management communication channels. With all of the remote work that's being done today, I thought it prudent to throw something out, discuss these options that you have as a work from home project manager or a remote project manager, and really kind of give you guys some soft skills and tools that you can use, as well as some knowledge around the different communication channels that you can leverage. So what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk about the different communication channels that are open to you, what the channels are, how to use them, tips and tricks that have worked well for me in the past as well as today, how not to use them in some cases, and then also when to use them. Okay, so this is a little different than some of the other videos you may have seen. Basically, I'm just trying to provide some soft skills and tell you about your communication options. I'm not trying to sell you a software package. I mean, it seems like most of the project management videos that I'm seeing these days are people trying to push a particular software package that says, oh, buy our software, and all of a sudden you're going to be an excellent project manager, right? That's not really the case. Okay, so good software cannot fix a bad project manager. I'm a practitioner. Okay, I have a history of managing multi-million-dollar projects with local, remote, and global teams and clients. So I'm pretty experienced at this stuff, but that is going to give me a little bit of a slant too in terms of my experience and what I'm going to share. So this video is for remote project managers or project managers in general who want to get better at remote communication. Understanding that my background is in the technical project management. I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, and I'm also in an outsourcing field. So I worked a long time at an engineering outsourcing firm. So that's kind of my slant on engineering projects and things like that from project management standpoint. So these tools and tips that I'm going to show you today have helped me with communicating with clients and my teams immensely. So I think if you're in that stream of outsourcing or technical project management, where you're dealing with a number of different people with maybe they do or don't have technical backgrounds, I think this video is going to be able to help you. This particular topic on communication channels is a little bit broader than some of the other videos I'm going to be posting. So I think it'll apply to other project managers as well. But specifically, I'm typically targeting the technical project manager audience. If you don't know why this is important or why communication is important, I really am not thinking this video is for you. Okay, so we're very much in a global workforce. We're all working remote right now for the coronavirus. So again, I think this is pretty timely. So let's get into it. So before we start, I do want to talk about a couple of things that I consider keys to the kingdom in terms of communication. The first of them is you have to know your audience. What are they concerned with? What channels do they respond to best? What's the easiest way to get a hold of them? What's their background? What do they expect with the communication that you're trying to send out? And what's your relationship with that person? This business, project management, is about relationships. You need to understand that as you put on your project manager lens. The best project managers are experts at dealing with people. So we're going to talk about 5 main communication channels. The first one is in person, instant messaging, phone calls, web call, video conferencing, and of course, email. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So in person, I would say that this is the best mode of communicating. Obviously, as I mentioned, there's a lot of circumstances that don't allow this to happen, particularly in today's environment with everything that's going on. But in-person communication is really good because you get all those nonverbal cues, right? You get the good eye contact, you're shaking hands, you're being able to read their body language. And there's some statistics out there that indicate like 80 or 90% or something of communication is nonverbal. In person allows you to absorb all of that, but that's not always an option, right? So when you're not able to do the in-person stuff, you have to start looking at the other communication channels. So instant messaging. I'm trying to be a little bit funny here with the dog, but the reality is that if you do this wrong, that's exactly how you're going to look. Like you're begging for some kind of information, right? You're like, hey, what do you got? What's up? What's going on? Hey. Don't do that. Okay, instant messages are meant to be short. This is something that if you were local, the idea would be popping your head into Tom's office down the hall and say, hey, Tom, you got a second? And you just want to talk to him for a couple minutes about a particular topic. But what you don't want to do in an instant message is to send an instant message that says, hi, and then just wait for them to respond. It's super annoying. Everyone is busy, and I personally hate it. Maybe that's a pet peeve of mine, but I cannot stand that. If you need something, say something. Hey, did you get my email? Have you had a chance to respond to that? Hey, can you get back to me regarding XYZ? those are all fine. Okay, so those instant messages are supposed to be short and quick, and they're typically a little bit more casual. If you need something formally documented, instant message is not the way to go. And I would also point out that text messaging probably also falls into the instant messaging category. It is a messaging application, and I would classify it separately from the phone. So let's talk about the phone call. So phone calls have been around for a long time. They can be used for a whole bunch of different stuff. They can be used for quick, casual conversations. They can be used for scheduled meetings where you discuss an in-depth topic, a whole number of different things. So phone calls are kind of like a multi-use tool, right? So when you're talking about phone calls, one of the nice things about phone calls as opposed to instant messages is that you do have access to some nonverbal cues. Okay, so tone of voice is definitely a nonverbal cue. You can also pick up on long pauses and things that would indicate, hey, this person is either thinking about something or they're potentially disgruntled. You'll be able to pick up on that on the phone if you're paying attention, and that's important. Still not as good as in person because, again, you don't get to pick up on the body language or anything like that. So be wary of that. But the phone call is definitely one that is useful, and it's used a lot, right? Conference calls and regular phone calls and all that stuff is very, very popular, and it's an important channel to master. And one thing I would caution too is a lot of people seem to be nervous about picking up the phone and calling someone for an unscheduled call. As a project manager, you can't be worried about that. If they don't have time to talk to you right that second, they won't answer the phone. Leave them a message. Okay, so don't get worried about, it's 9 o'clock and they usually have a meeting at 9 o'clock. Understanding that that's definitely something you should know. Like if they're in typical meetings, like, yeah, maybe that's not a good time to call. But if it's worth a phone call, it's worth leaving a voicemail. Okay, so don't shy away from that because they might pick up the phone. They might be expecting something from you and you need to get a hold of them, or they're expecting you to do so. So make sure you keep that in your arsenal and keep it handy. And obviously today, make sure you know where your phone call is going to. Is it going to their desk phone? Is it going to their cell phone? I know some people will try the desk phone first and then go to the cell phone just because they feel the cell phone is a little bit more private, and that's okay. So just keep in mind, where the stuff is going to. The next one we talk about is web call and video conferencing. So this is the step, kind of a mingling between obviously the in-person and the phones, right? It's still virtual, but in this application, you can pick up on body language. You can pick up on seeing people and kind of what they're doing. But this is still a major challenge. It does take more bandwidth to do web calls and stuff, and we're getting a lot better at that. You see these Zoom calls and all this stuff. You got a bunch of people on there. Challenge is when you are in multiple different environments, you're not able to control those environments. For example, when you're sitting in a conference room, it's pretty easy to limit the outside distractions, right? I mean, people may still have their cell phones or whatever, but you try to say, hey, close your laptops or whatever. This is important. We want to talk through this. When you're doing a virtual meeting, you don't have that option, right? Everybody's stuff is everywhere. Their email pops up and they're like, oh, what's that? Or dogs bark and whatever. Like, you can't control the environment. So again, web calls are good. Video conferencing is good. It's definitely better than not having that ability to read the body language, but at the same time, understand that there's a lot of distractions that come with that. And you'll usually spend the first 5 minutes trying to figure out whose webcam is on and what the mute is and all that stuff, just because for whatever reason, we can't seem to figure that out. Okay. So the next channel would be email. And email is way overused, in my opinion. It's a great tool, but it's good for documentation, not communication. And what I mean when I say that is that email is good to obviously document something, but it doesn't give you any clue as to what the other person is thinking, what they're seeing, what they're feeling. There's no nonverbals in there whatsoever. And emails can really get away from you because you can't pick up on that tone. And if you don't know that person well and you send an email that has an exclamation point in the wrong place, it has something that's bold or something that's underlined, the connotations can become negative very quickly. So you really, really have to be careful about that. I typically leverage email as a project manager to follow up on phone conversations or other discussions that we've had in order to make sure that it's captured. But I try to limit those, right? If it's something I can put in the status report and then email it, that's what I'll do. I'll hit the highlights in the email, like, hey, here's the top 3 things you need to know out of that status report I've attached. If you want more of the details, open that up and take a look at it. That's fine. But relying solely on email is a mistake. I mean, most people's inboxes are getting 100 emails, 200 emails a day, and it's just overwhelming. So to expect that you would use an email the same way that you would use an instant message or a text or a phone call is a mistake. And of course, the regularly scheduled meetings, those obviously you have time blocked out. So emails typically should be reserved for trying to document interactions and getting across information in a formal manner, more so than like your instant message. So really, those are the main channels. But in terms of when you use those, it really depends on who your contact is, how you typically interface with them, and what the needs are. The needs of your contact and the need of the information that they need to have. Right. So it's not going to do you any good to send an instant message that says, "Hey, project's on track." That doesn't mean anything, right? That client might need a status report for an urgent meeting, in which case you would need to get that status report to them via an email. If it's something urgent, there's nothing wrong with a phone call that says, "Hey, Bob, listen, we're running into a cost problem. I'm working on fixing it, but this might delay us a week if we keep the same cost structure, or it's going to cost 5% more in order for us to crank this out. I'm working on it. I just wanted to let you know." That's a phone call. Okay. That's not an email. You can follow up with an email later, but if something needs to happen fast, you need to understand how you can get a hold of your client or your stakeholder, whoever that may be, whether they're on your internal team or as part of the stakeholder team of the client. So again, when to use these channels really depends on your current circumstances and what you're trying to accomplish, as well as who your contact is and what their preferences are, what modes they respond to best. So really, this is a relationship game. You need to understand what's going on, so, and what their expectations are. So that's all I have for today, guys. I hope this was valuable to you. Enjoy it and check out some of my other videos. Take care.